Hello and welcome. We are Group 1 and we are bringing you air pollution in the news. I will give you a quick glance into Group 1. So, number 1 we have Yasmin, number 2 we have Amenti, number 3 we have Taylor, number 4 we have Georgia, and number 5 we have Sam.
The article we chose is from CBS News, published in April of this year. The topic of the article is that 46% of U.S. residents are exposed to unhealthy levels of air. These areas have received a grade of F in at least one of these three categories: short-term particle pollution, year-round particle pollution, or ozone pollution. The key evidence and details of our article are: number 1, air pollution rates have gone down since the Clean Air Act in 1970, but the rates are slowly rising due to climate change. 2, within the top 10 worst ranked cities, 5 of them are in California, with the remaining 5 being one each in Oregon, Michigan, Texas, Ohio, and Arkansas. 3, the worst air has been concentrated in the west due to high heat and lack of rain. However, this air is starting to move east, with populations growing and causing more pollution. And 4, this year, 31 environmental regulations will be removed, putting the U.S. population at risk, which leads us to number 5. By removing these regulations, more ozone and particle pollution can cause the health of the citizens to go down and cause issues with asthma and health defects in newborn babies.
Change is a big factor in our air quality. Because of climate change, there has been a widespread of ozone particle pollution throughout our nation. For example, over the last couple of years, even especially last year, California has had a high rise of extreme heat waves, which has caused multiple wildfires throughout the state due to climate change. From the ALA list of top 10 cities with the worst year-round particle pollution, we can see that Bakersfield, Delano, California is ranked number 1 at the worst. But there are a total of 5 cities in California alone with the worst year-round particle pollution, which is not even surprising because of the state's recent acceleration of warming over the past few years. Even though climate change plays a significant role in our air quality, we must acknowledge the rise of some pollution sources such as oil and gas industry, power plants, industrial facilities, and many more across America, which has and will spread high volumes of ozone pollution and various particle pollutants throughout our nation. Illnesses and diseases like asthma, heart attacks, lung cancer, and even premature death are being brought on by the proliferation of chemicals and toxins in our country, constantly polluting our air. For example, our construction workers and other workers who stay outside for long periods of hours are primarily affected by constantly breathing in this contaminated air, which causes them to become sick. And if they're sick, they can't put food on the table for their families, they cannot work, or possibly may lose their life. If our poor air quality has negative impacts on adults, what about our children, who are known for having lower immune system than adults? They are most likely of having worse complications and illnesses due to our bad air pollution. Even pregnant women who are exposed to this have a higher chance of having low weight effect on their unborn babies. According to ALA reports, systematic racism and segregation puts people of color and underprivileged communities at greater risk for major long-term health defects. This puts the sources of pollution closer to these communities, putting them in close proximities to facilities or plants, which has a negative impact on the health of both the children and adults in disadvantaged communities. More regulations about plant facilities and other sources of air pollution need to be put in place about the impacts of our communities, states, and our nation as a whole. We can only do that through the help of EPA, ALA, WHO, and many more agencies that help reduce and better our environment air quality. But we're facing an even bigger issue of proposed funding cuts, staff cuts, and many other cuts in these agencies. If this is to happen, we will face even worse health complications, air quality, and so much more over time. Awareness needs to be made.
Let's talk about the lessons learned that we learned from the CBS article. So there are approximately 7 major lessons learned. We'll focus on the first 5. As you can see, air pollution is worsening nationwide. And because of this, right now, 156 million Americans, that is approximately 46 of the population, are breathing unhealthy air. This is an increase of 25 million compared to just last year for 2024, because the article was written this year in 2025. That means nearly half of the country is at risk from the air we breathe every day. And then we move on to see that the climate change is a major driver of this. And one of the biggest reasons for this trend in climate change is due to extreme heat, drought, and especially wildfires are fueling higher levels of both the ozone and fine particles. These conditions are not only persistent, but they are making pollution harder to control. And then we see that the short-term particle pollution is also surging. Another concerning trend is that the surge for short-term particle pollution is spiking to a 16-year high, which is exposing 77 million people to dangerous levels. And as this continues to develop, we're going to see that these spikes, they're going to come down suddenly during wildfire smoke events or extreme weather, making them especially even more harmful. Then we can move on to see that the health impacts are serious and widespread, and pretty much due to the health consequences we're seeing with air pollution, it's contributing to asthma attacks, heart disease, strokes, lung cancer, even preterm births, um, and even cognitive decline. These are all major side effects that we're actually seeing in our daily lives. It also is going to shorten our life expectancy as well, and it's just reducing the quality of overall life for millions of Americans. And lastly, we see that there is a geographic burden that's shifting. So the article did a study, comparing the West Coast to the East Coast. Pretty much in short, air pollution is worsening across all of America, but we see that there is this trend that is shifting. Um, you'd think that, the West Coast is struggling, but now we're beginning to see that the Eastern and Midwestern regions are seeing that and are being profoundly impacted as well. Now we're going to conclude our lessons learned with the last 2 major highlights that we learned from the article. Number 6 talks about policy rollbacks, which essentially is a fancy way of saying how government and politics, policy, all those things contribute to how we are preventing making further progress with how we're dealing with climate change. Another challenge that we face is the rollback of environmental protections. An example of this is cuts to the EPA, which weakens our ability to have to safeguard clean air, making it harder to maintain the progress we've already achieved. Essentially, without consistent federal support, decades of improvement could just be put on pause, or it could be outright going in the other direction, depending on who's in office. All those play a pivotal role in how we are governing, of how we're fighting for climate change. The last major takeaway is the uneven air quality progress. Air quality improvements are not evenly distributed, while in few areas like Bangor, Maine, that we saw in the article, they've really done a really good job of how they achieved clean air, but we see that most of the region continues to lag behind. So if you really look at it for the whole entire study, what we talked on the last slide about the West Coast compared to the East Coast. Bangor, Maine is what we would call a statistical outlier, and that they're doing really well in this. Other regions and other areas surrounding the East Coast, we're seeing highlights of pollution and the unfortunately the highlights of the patchwork of progress, where some communities benefit, many others are put at risk that we're seeing. So bottom line is, why does all this matter? What are we learning? What are we taking away from these lessons learned? We're seeing that essentially without stronger protections and real climate action, decades of hard-won air quality gains could easily be reversed. And as we've seen, vulnerable communities will bear the greatest burdens. So essentially, the core lesson here is we have to look at that we're driving home the point to protect clean air. It isn't just an environmental priority, but it's also looking at quality of life, health, fairness, and future sustainability.
Hello everyone, this is Amanti. To conclude our presentation, I'll just make a quick summary of some high-level information that we have. Despite the pollution concentration in the West, studies now show that the issue is widespread across the US, mainly due to climate change that has been the main driving factor. On the other hand, the progresses made in the past decades in reducing pollution is now at risk due to deregulations in the recent years. And this has severe health impacts ranging from cardiovascular and respiratory issues to cognitive and pregnancy complications. It is also to be noted that these impacts disproportionately affect disadvantaged communities like Black people due to the fact that decision makers often find it easier to build power plants, industrial facilities, landfills, and highways in these areas. So there is an urgent need for continued advocacy and policy action to prevent further pollution and build on the momentum from past decades. And that will be it for our presentation. If you have any question, please feel free to reach out to us on D12 discussion board or personally through email. Thank you.